Like, when I tell you that this project is a process, it's a process. I am currently so overwhelmed by something I have tried to paint for so long. Maybe I tried to paint it like 12 years ago, and that's what it looked like. And then I tried to paint it again like 4 years ago, and that's what it looked like. And now we're here, and there's so much to do. Let's go on a tour of what's gonna be there, because it's a lot, and I need to unpack it so I can paint it. The traditional tower is often reduced to disaster, chaos, sudden collapse. In the Rider-Waite tradition, the lightning does not create the problem, it reveals it. The tower has already been built upon assumptions of permanence, authority, certainty, control. The lightning merely exposes the illusion. The crown flies from the top because the structure was never as stable as it believed itself to be. And Reno Tarot expands this idea. Rather than depicting a single tower struck once, this tower examines what happens when the same certainty repeatedly rebuilds itself across generations. Built vertically from a single parcel of land along the Truckee River, the card layers histories atop one another. The watershed itself, the fish that sustained life within it, Chinatown, the Alhambra House, the old iron bridge, the post office federal building combo thing, the Mapes Hotel, the Mapes implosion, and the belief sign, City Plaza. Each layer arrives carrying the language of progress. Each eventually changes, disappears, is renamed, is replaced, rebranded, reframed. Becomes not whether collapse occurs, but whether collapse has become part of the system. The Truckee River forms the foundation of the card. It predates Reno, Chinatown Bridge, Post Office Mapes, Believe. Long before the city developed narratives about itself, the watershed sustained migration, trade, survival, relationship, memory. The river functions as witness rather than participant. It remembers what the city forgets. The land is older than every claim made upon it. Swimming beneath the entire structure are Lahontan cutthroat trout moving upstream, scarred, exhausted, fucked up, driven by forces older than the city itself. Unlike the buildings above them, they do not claim permanence, they simply continue. The fish connect the card to the watershed and to the deep histories that existed before civic identity was imposed upon the landscape. They function as witnesses to cycles larger than any single generation. The Chinatown layer acknowledges one of Reno's most uncomfortable histories. One of them. A community existed, contributed, survived, endured. It was then subjected to displacement, violence, racism, and erasure. This layer is not presented as a historical footnote, but as evidence that collapse often begins long before buildings fall. The destruction of a place begins when people decide whose presence matters and whose can be removed. The bridge serves as a threshold between eras. Unlike many of the structures above it, it was built to connect. It represents movement, crossing, exchange, continuity. Through historical research, the bridge became less a symbol and more a document. Evidence that real people occupied this ground long before later narratives replaced them. The post office / federal building introduces institutional authority, government, order, legitimacy, the belief that permanence can be imposed upon a changing landscape. It represents systems that assume stability while standing atop histories they neither created nor fully understand. The Mapes represents ambition, prosperity, growth, the promise of modernity. For many Reno residents, it became synonymous with the city itself. Its presence reflects a recurring belief that larger, newer, more visible structures can secure permanence against time. The implosion is the lightning strike of this tower, not because a building falls, but because a community chooses to erase part of its own memory and call the act progress. The collapse is public, it's celebrated, documented, justified. The question is not whether or not, destruction occurred. The question is what was gained and what was lost in the process. At the top sits believe. In isolation, the word functions as optimism. Within the context of the card, it becomes a question. Believe what? Believe whom? Believe despite what history? The sign becomes the latest layer in a long sequence of civic identities placed upon the same ground. It represents the stories cities tell themselves in order to move forward, and the risk of confusing branding with understanding. This is where Reno Tarot diverges most clearly from the Rider-Waite. The traditional card asks, what false structure is collapsing? This card asks, what false certainty keeps rebuilding itself? In Rider-Waite, there is one tower, one strike, one fall. In Reno Tarot, there are many towers. Every layer, whatever comes next. Not separate towers, but the same tower wearing different clothes. The same assumption repeating itself generation after generation. This time we got it right. The authority in the traditional tower resides within the structure itself. In Reno Tarot, the city becomes the tower, not a building, a mindset, a recurring civic behavior, a pattern of deciding what matters, what can be sacrificed, what should be remembered, and what can be erased. The emotional center shifts as well. Rider-Waite gives us falling figures. Reno Tarot gives us fish. The falling figures represent the cost of collapse, and the fish represent what survives collapse. As the buildings rise through the composition, they become increasingly temporary. The river, the watershed, the fish remain. The tower places the structure at the center of the image. Reno Tarot slowly reveals that the structure was never the center at all.